Who made the decision when you were 11 years old to bring you up?
My parents did.
And how did that come about?
My two older sisters are 5 and 10 years older than me, and because we live in a small town, the educational opportunities there were limited, and so my sisters actually moved to a different town, a bigger town where they were going to high school and college, and so I was left alone with my grandmother when I was 11, and so my parents recognized that having an 11-year-old kid sort of on her own wasn't the best, and so that's when they decided to bring me to live with them.
And what was your trip across the border like?
It's interesting you asked that, because a lot of people might be expecting a story about how I crossed over the Rio Grande and climbed over the wall that exists in some parts of the border, but I actually came here on a plane. I mean, it's a really boring story. I had a tourist visa, and that's how I came here, and that's how 40% of undocumented immigrants in the country actually came here on some sort of visa that later expired, and that's how we became undocumented.
Well, Julissa Arce, how do you manage life's bureaucracies as an undocumented immigrant? How did you manage to get into school, to get to Goldman Sachs?
Yeah. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to manage life as an undocumented immigrant, because there are certain aspects of life that are pretty mundane for everyone else. Like when you're driving a car, you don't think twice about driving a car, you're just driving, right? For me, I didn't have a driver's license because Texas doesn't provide driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. That's where I grew up. And therefore, driving a car was really scary. Going to college, for example, I had done everything that I was supposed to do. I took AP classes, I graduated with honors from high school, but I still couldn't get into college. And it was the changing of the law in Texas that allowed me to go to college. And so for many of us who grew up undocumented or who still are undocumented, the relief many times comes from local and state laws.
At what point in your life did you know that you were undocumented?
I was 14. I was 14 years old when I realized that my visa had expired, and that meant that I couldn't go to Mexico. I tell this story in my Underground American Dream, my book, that the reason I found out I was undocumented is because I wanted to have a quinceañera, right, which is the big party we have when we're 15 years old. And I wanted to have one, and I wanted to have it in Mexico with all my family. And that's when my mom revealed to me that I couldn't go to Mexico, because if I did, I wouldn't be able to come back.